Hey there, YouTube. Welcome on back to ArtichokeDip. Welcome in, guys. My name is Rob, solo tabletop gamer, and finally arrived. I pre-ordered this, and it has finally showed up. As a matter of fact, showed up Friday night. I cracked open the cellophane, took a quick look inside, but I had things to do Saturday morning, so I had to go to bed early. And then this afternoon, I sat down and got into it, read through the rule book. Really dived into it, and so I could, get a video out and do a review on it, and, my first impressions of it and what I thought. So with that being said, before I get into it, if you guys like gaming content like this, don't forget to click the like button. It's going to bring more gaming content your way, not just my videos. It's going to bring other gaming content out. And if you're new here, just slid in and just found my channel, don't forget to click that subscribe button followed by the bell icon every time I do upload, because I'm not your average YouTuber. I don't upload all the time. So when I do, you'll get a notification so you don't miss one. All right, so let's jump on into Dragonsbane. And I'm sure people got a lot of questions. Is it worth it? Am I going to like it? Is it what the hype has said it was going to be? So on and so forth. We're going to answer those questions. So when you open up the box set, there's a couple of things in here that you're going to see that, and I'm going to break them down one by one and explain them to you. So the very where'd that cover sheet go? I guess it doesn't matter. I'm like knocking stuff off my table, Artichoke. There you go. Okay, so when you open it up, there's a cover sheet, and it's going to explain to you, hey, this is Dragonbane, and getting started, how to get started with an RPG. So for people who are like new, never played an RPG ever before in their life, you're also going to get a set of polyhedrals. These are green, they're pretty cool. Comes with two 20s. I'll explain this in a second. The one is marked with a dragon, and the 20 is marked with a demon. 4 6-siders. The reason why they give you 4 is for rolling up attributes. And then, of course, if you take your 20s, you're going to have your standard polyhedral dice set, like the original that we're used to in the 80s with D&D, which is going to be your 20, your 12, your 8, your 6, your 4, oh, and your 10. Forgot about the 10. So there's no percentile dice in this set. It's just your standard polyhedral set. You're also going to get a couple of decks of cards in there. More about those in a minute. And they're also, I got everything just a complete mess because I've already been through this, and I thought it just did not turn out well. So I was a little upset about that, but hey, no use crying over spilled milk, right? And if you open it up and you are so eager to get into the game just right away that you just cannot wait, they give you already pre-generated characters to roll with. So you have Orla Moonsilver, which is an elf. They call it a hunter, but I call it a ranger. Archmaster, a Odin, which is your mage. You're going to have Krasana, the Bold, which is a halfling thief. This one's cool. This might be one I'll actually play around with because it's a pretty cool concept, and that is Mikander of Halfbay, which I'll talk about that when we get into kin. And then, of course, Baston Bloodjaw, which is a wolfkin. I mean, he is a wolfkin fighter. And I'm guessing, I gotta look real quick because, yeah, okay. So the last one, he's not a fighter. He is, of course, a knight. So they give you these, and you can just use these right off the rip and go right into the game and play with them. And the cool thing is, like any starter set, as you go through the rule book, you're going to find the same artwork, you know, repeated through there, which is kind of cool. Here's the other thing they give you, a two-sided map, one side dungeon, one side terrain. Of course, you get the cardboard standees. You also get the little plastic clips if you want to use them. Now, for me, I won't use the standees because, I mean, I have my terrain like this that I'm going to use, my minis that I'm going to use with my terrain. The other thing that they include in this that's really cool, this one is the world map, and this is the Misty Vale. As you can see, let's see if I can... But the cool thing about this map is when you turn it over on the back, here are the names of all the Kickstarter backers. They're top backers that backed this game to make it possible. I thought that was a cool touch. That really was. And then, of course, for the map, you get the adventure book. And I haven't gone through this. Didn't want to spoil anything for myself. But, of course, your map's going to correlate with your adventure book. Now, of course, once you get through all that, and let's say none of the expansions have come out yet, but you still want to play this, and maybe you ran out of everything, they do give you a deck of cards and explain how to create your own adventures, how to use them cards and build them, and to make your, guess what you call, for a better word, your own homebrews. That's what people call them today. You know, I just call them, yeah, your campaigns. That's what we used to call them back in the day, but now they call them homebrews, which is kind of like, oh, okay. And the other thing that's really cool is they give you character sheets, which are blank, and they're two-sided, so you can, you know, essentially, if you look at it that way, you get 10. Now, am I going to use these? Of course not. What I'm going to do is just photocopy these, and then I'll just use the photocopy. I'll save these, and that way, you know, I'll always have them. And just use the photocopy version, just as good for me. Last but not least, we'll get into this. This is what's really cool, and this is for solo play. It's a pretty cool little booklet. It goes through there, it gives you some basic tables, exploration tables, missions. Basically, if you're new to tabletop RPGs, you're new to the whole concept of solitaire play and playing tabletop games, this is a really cool starting point because it's going to walk you through it. It's very basic. The game itself, even the concept of it, is very basic. As a matter of fact, if you played any type of RPG, if you have ever played Forbidden Lands that Free League Publishing publishes, The One Ring, you're going to find yourself right at home with this. If you're familiar with, I'm going to say, any D20 system from 3E on up, you're going to find this to be very, very simple. The grass, matter of fact, you're going to find some things that are going to seem very familiar to you. And if you've played anything like CNC, Castles and Crusades, or Swords and Wizardry, any of those D20 systems, once again, you're going to find some parallels here that will make you feel right at home. So let's jump on into Dragonsbane, the main core rule book, and see what this has to offer. So the cool thing is, it starts out explaining to you, which is kind of funny. I just laughed at this. Getting a little too ahead of myself. Let me back up a little bit. So the first thing you read is the preface, which was really cool. This Thomas Harstram from, and he wrote the forward preface in Stockholm, England, December of 2022. And basically what it was is he explained how sitting by a fireplace in his old house, and first time he ever played an RPG, and pretty much from that moment on forward, he's been, you know, just absolutely head over heels for RPGs, and it just changed his life. I think for a lot of us out there, our first RPG we've ever played and kind of had that experience with it. It's the reason why we still, to this day, enjoy them. And so it was really cool to read that, and how it explained back in the 80s, D&D was huge here. This is what everybody was playing. D&D was this whole new concept, the whole thought of levels and experience points, and you know, it was just this massive wide open game that anything you could imagine or think of to do, you could do it. You had no restraints, no nothing like that. And it was just a very huge concept. It was like a brand new frontier to be explored. Whereas that was happening here in the United States at that time, Dragonbane over in Sweden, that's what they were playing with. So Free League Publishing decided, hey, it's time to revamp it, it's time to update it, and it's time to get it out there in multiple different languages and share it with the world. So let's jump on into, when you get into the beginning, it's very important that you read the little lore behind it, and explains how this world was created. And there were dragons and there were demons, and the dragons pretty much is, I don't want to say kept them in control, because the way reading the forward doesn't go like that, but I know it sounds very confusing, so I'm going to get right to the point. It explains the concept behind to you about the whole name Dragonsbane, which is where we're going to start. And reading that is very important because it sets up the entire premise of the game. And everything else in this book revolves around this one little tale here. And it may just be beneficial for you guys, for me just to go through it and explain it to you, because I think it'll... Fuck it, I'm just going to read it. Okay, so it says, "It was in the oldest times, before the world was covered in forest and iron was tamed by dwarven masters, before the advent of humanity and the mastery of the bread and ale making arts. The world was then ruled by dragons and demons. Yes, draconic serpents and demonic creatures were the princes and princesses of the old times. Then were the primordial forces through which the world and its primeval matter was formed, the sky, the mountains, and the fiery oceans of magma and of unthinking life. They were opposed principles that made the world complete: law and order versus chaos and madness, the stable and fixed versus the wild and the eternally fluid. Dragons versus demons. The most ancient record tells of a draconic empire that once spanned much of the known world, where the emperor's peace was upheld by cruel dragon-mounted knights. But the text also contained traces of another great power from a different age, governed by demon princes who shrouded the world in madness and savage rage. Remnants of these realms still rest in the earth beneath our feet. In the depths of the great forest and in the chasms of the mountains slumbered memories from ancient eras where vicious beast reigned. The hostility between dragons and demons has brought death and ruin upon the ancient civilizations. It seems almost like a fundamental law of nature that anything created by dragons alone is corrupted by demons, and that anything born of demonic will is burned to ashes by dragon fire. However, this basic and incontrovertible truth also gives cause for hope, for it has created the conditions for other nations where humans and other races have been able to flourish and go their own way. But the ancient guardians of order and destruction will never leave the world to its fate. As sure as night follows day, the time will come again when dragons and demons contend for power over humanity, nature, and the eternal mysteries. Excerpt from Godmundag, the Elder Imperial Chronicle of the Oldest Times and Their Remnants. Okay, so, you know, it was kind of long-winded, but it sets up the basic, how do I put this? The basic knowledge you need to understand the game. So when it comes to the D20, and I had explained to you the D20 was marked, the 20 is marked with a demon, and the 1 is marked with a dragon. So a lot of RPGs that you're used to playing that incorporate a D20, typically you want a 20, you want the higher number. Not in this game. In this game, a 20 is bad. You want a 1. So this is actually one of them games, if you got some 20-siders laying around that seem to always just perpetually screw you over every time, the only thing it wants to roll is a 1. If you're lucky, maybe a 6. Maybe it's time to break them out. Probably find yourself a game that they'll work really well for. You know, the cool thing is the dice, you know, they actually did put the little symbols in there for you, so that makes it nice. You won't lose the dice set, and if they do get mixed in with the other dice, you'll know what set they go with. Anyways, so when it comes to Dragon Age, it's pretty standard of what you're going to see. If you, like I said, you played a D20 system, you're going to find a lot of similarities here, and, you know, stuff will not be really all that hard to understand. So when you go through the character sheet, you have basic things to fill out here, and they're not like even making a character for 5e or anything like that. It's going to be far more simple. So you're going to have your name, and wow, think of a name. But you start out like a lot of, I'm going to say the free leagues do, where you're going to come to your kin, and your kin's going to be broken down into 6 different, they call them kin. If you're used to playing D20 systems, they call those races, but in this system, they call them kin. And those are going to be human, halfling, dwarf, elf, mallard, and wolfkin. So all of those were represented when I showed these original character sheets with their pictures. And as you go through with the kin and you decide, hey, if you're going to play a halfling, you're going to play a human, or whatever you're going to play, every character starts out with a heroic ability, more about that here in a minute, and 3 willpower points. Now, after you have chosen your kin, you're going to move on to your professions. And your professions are, think of those as classes. You're going to have an artisan, a bard, a fighter, a hunter, a knight, a mage, a mariner, a merchant, a scholar, and a thief. So most of these, if you play D20 systems, you're used to. They're just your regular fantasy trope type of classes that you're going to be used to. The bard's a bard. The fighter's a fighter. A hunter is more akin to a ranger in a lot of D20 systems, except for that they are going to be unable to wield spells. The knight, well, that's a knight. The mage is just what it sounds like, the mage. Then there's a couple of these in here that I'm going to say are unique, and it's kind of refreshing. It's a different take on I'm going to put feels like the way this is set up, like a classic RPG system, but it kind of gives you some more options, and it's like a breath of fresh air, if you will. So the first thing is the artisan, and this is very cool with the artesian and what the artesian does. And reading through this, you don't shortchange yourself if you pick up this set. Make sure you read all the entries to these, because it's going to really help you decide the adventuring party you want to create. But with the artesian, it's very important, because as you go through the game and you progress, your weapons have a durability rating to them. And over time, they can become damaged and weakened to the point to where they require work in order for them to be effective again. Now, you have two choices with that. One, you can return to town and find a smithy to be able to fix your weapons for you. Or if you have an artisan in your party, when you take a long shift rest, more about that here in a minute, think of that if your adventuring party has decided to stop for the night in camp, and now you have an entire evening to be able to rest and do the things you need to do. The artisan can actually repair your weapons for you. It's very important. The bard is a bard of, I tried playing a couple of those in 3rd edition. I just really didn't. I've never really liked the bard class. Just never have. The fighter, otherwise known as your tank. The hunter, otherwise known as the ranger. The knight, the mage. Now, the mariner. So the mariner is your cutthroat. Those could be pirates. I view the mariner more so like the rogue, what we consider a rogue, but it's really not. So if you're thinking of the rogue, like out of anything from 3E on up, not really. They're more cutthroat. They're all about adventuring the high seas and finding the treasure and doing whatever they have to do to be able to get to that and cut down whoever stands in their way to get to it. The other cool one that I seen in here was the merchant. And I know what you may be thinking, like a merchant, like how can you have a character that's a merchant? But depending on how you make that character and what that character's for. What if that character is a merchant that collects very rare and very powerful magical artifacts? Think of some of the stories you could come up with, how you go about obtaining those and where you have to go to obtain them. The other one that was very unique, and when reading this, I was like, this is really cool. And I could actually foresee this being really good for not only an NPC, but you could make a protagonist out of this. And this is the scholar. And the scholar is just, in fact, what it looks like. But the scholar's going to be looking at old scrolls and books and reading and gaining this knowledge, but really they have to verify the knowledge. So the only way they can verify that will be to travel to these locations. Best way I can give you an example how I rationalize this and thought about this in my mind for an RPG. Let's just take a look at the ancient city of Troy, right? Before it was discovered, at that point in modern human thinking, it was myth. It never existed. It was just part of mythology. It was, it didn't exist until they found it. And similar idea with this, the scholar could be used in the game for perhaps through the old tales and some of the other clues that has led the scholar to this, let's say, well-hidden treasure that contains a lot of power, magical power, what have you, super ultra rare artifacts of power, magical items of power, whatever your imagination can come up with. And the scholar is able to put all the pieces of these puzzle together and lead the party in the right direction to be able to find them. Of course, the next profession is the thief. And then we get into age. So in this game system, age is huge. If you've ever played Forbidden Lands, one of the things you'll notice when you create a character is it goes off of age, and age is going to determine your attributes. Whereas in this game, age doesn't really affect your attributes. your attributes are affected by age, but what age actually affects is the skills. So obviously, the older your character is, the more knowledge they are, and the more skills they are going to start with. So when you pick your profession, each profession comes with a set of skills that pertain to that profession that they're going to start with. And you can see how you'd be benefited, especially let's say you had a scholar character. You probably want them an older scholar character because, well, they're going to start out with more skill points versus the young one. But you shouldn't let that really prevent you from, creating a character like that. It's just one of those things to think about, especially if you're playing solitaire. You're going to want to get as much as you can going out the gate. You know what I mean? So the next thing we're going to move on to is your attributes. So looking at the character sheet here, if you can see that right up here, you have 6 basic attributes, which you're going to find very familiar. Strength, which is right here, constitution, agility, intelligence, willpower, charisma. Okay, so when you go to create a character, so I have to give you the 4d6. You roll the 4d6, remove the lowest number, add them 3 together, and build your character. Add your attributes to them. It's a cool way. It's the way I do it anyways. It's the way a lot of people do it, but it's cool to give you the dice to actually do that. And then after you assign your attributes, and of course your skills, you can pick other, at that point your attributes are going to reflect your bonuses for your other skills in here. Then of course, if you look, you have secondary skills which you can choose, and then of course you're going to have your combat skills as well. Now when you roll up your attributes and you assign your skills, of course it does have a attribute tree, as you can see right here. And then if you look over here, these are going to be what they call your base chances. So base chances are basically your ability modifiers. And if you're a mage, that's going to tell you exactly how many spells your character is going to be able to utilize in a game session. It's also going to basically, simply put, ability modifier. Bam, that's what it is right out the door. Damage bonuses. So depending on your strength modifier, you're either going to have a D4 to add to your roll or a D6. It just all depends. And in this system, your abilities can only range from 3 to 18. So if you're on the low side, you get no damage bonus. If you're on a 13 through 16, you get plus D4. And then anything from a 17 and you got it to an 18, you're going to have a D6, which is on the higher end of the things. Movement's a little weird for the fact that I'm in the United States of America and we use the imperial system. Outside of this country, they use the metric system. So for them, they will understand this. Everything is in metric, which is, well, meters. So, but it's not that hard to do the conversion. And honestly, looking at this, if you really honestly break it down and you look at the kin, humans and the elves can move at 30 feet per turn, whereas of your halflings, dwarves, and the mallards can move at 20 feet. The rare exception being the wolfkin. And the wolfkin are going to move roughly right about 30. I'm going to round it up to about 40 feet, we'll say. That'll be the closest conversion that we're going to have here for that, playing on the grids that we play on. And that's converting it into what we're used to seeing in our gaming here, where 1 square or 1 hex is going to represent 5 feet, whereas in their system that represents a 2 by 2 squared meter, if you will. So Same thing, just a little different way of looking at it. It's really, really not that too difficult to get underneath your belt. Okay, the other thing, when characters, you initially make your character, of all the professions, there's one that does not start with a heroic ability. Heroic ability, think of those like feats, but they're, I would compare it with a feat, but it's really not a feat. And as you progress through the game, you gain more heroic abilities. But like I said, there's one class that does not get one. That's the mage. When the mage starts out, initially, it gets no heroic ability because it gets magic. But once it gains the experience, and experience gained through this game isn't like what you're going to be used to in D20 systems, to where you're going to be recording experience points and going against progression of levels. It doesn't have that in this game, which is really cool how they tie it in. I really do like that. And we're going to explain that here in a little right now, just to get that out of the way. So if you notice right here on the skills, you'll see these little ticks right here, all the way down both sides. So this is a very skill heavy game, and you're going to roll a 20-sider for any one of your skills. Now at any time, if you roll a 1, that's a dragon. Good for you. You check that tick off. Now, whatever ability that skill was underneath, you get what they call a boon. A boon is where you're going to roll 2 20-siders, and you're going to take the lowest of the two for any of skill check relating to that ability for the rest of the game session. Now, if you roll a 20, which is a demon, at that point you get a Bane. Bane goes the other way. You're going to roll 2 20-siders, and you're going to take the higher of the two for the rest of the game session. Now, there is a reason for this and why they do that. The reason is you don't gain levels through experience. You gain levels through experience, but not the way that you're thinking of experience. You're actually gaining levels by utilizing your skills. So even if you roll a demon, you still mark that tick off. And then if you roll a dragon, you're still going to mark that tick off. Now, depending on where your skill number falls based off your attribute, at the end of your game session, you're going to roll a 20-sider. If you meet and or exceed that number, at that point, you gain in that skill, which means you're going to raise that by 1 point in all the skills you have ticks in. At any point, any one of your skills reaches 18. At that point, you gain another heroic ability. And essentially, you think about it leveling, but really in this game, there is no level like we would think. Really, you're just gaining more real world experience for the game system and the world that the characters are operating in, and that real world experience reflects that in their skills and their heroic abilities, becoming, of course, more and more abundant and powerful over time. Which you can see with the mage. The mage is going to start out without a heroic ability. He's going to have magic, but as he uses his magic skills and other skills, it's not going to take too long before that mage starts to become very rude very quickly. Okay, the other thing about the game that I noticed really unique was the fact that they use weakness, which kind of reminds me a little bit of the One Ring, how they incorporate that into it. But so you randomly roll on a 1d8 table here, and your character is going to start with one of these weaknesses, and it's going to be gullible, greedy, thin-skinned, foolhardy, faint-hearted, a monster slayer, intolerant, or slothful. And this is kind of cool because that weakness is going to help not only making decisions for your character, but if you're one of the people that enjoy role playing, ROLE, rather than ROLL, you know, you are going to be able to utilize that to the maximum amount. Whereas of RPG players like me, I tend to lean more towards the tactical sides of things, where I'm going to want 3D miniatures, I'm going to want terrain on the board, stuff like that, to be able to have a 3D representation. Which is cool about this game, and it explains that, because this game can be played either way. You can play it theater of the mind, or they provide the map and standees for you to put in there to have a visual representation when you play solo. Kind of like me. All right. So, you can also have alternative abilities, meaning heroic abilities. So if you decide to choose one of your abilities, and perhaps, you know, if you feel that the heroic ability listed by your profession really doesn't match the character you want to create, they have an alternative list here that you can go off of. And it's kind of funny. I mean, you can be gluttonous, you can be a kleptomaniac, you can be vain, reckless, fear of magic, craving knowledge, child of the wild, boastful, violent, overbearing, cynic, and haughty. All right. Moving on from there, it covers gear. Gear is gear. You know, I'm not going to really get into that a whole lot. Gear is going to be all the stuff you're going to need for your adventuring. You know, your rope, your torch, all that stuff. Encumbrance. One unique thing about this with the encumbrance that I love is the fact that how this works is you take your strength attribute, you half that, and then that is your encumbrance limit, which goes right here. So let's say you had a strength of 10, your encumbrance limit would be 5, which means you are able to carry 5 items in your inventory. Now it breaks your inventory up into heavy items, tiny items. Tiny items are anything you can carry in your hand, and really it doesn't count towards an item. And then it gets into coins. Like if you have 1 to 200 gold coins, that counts as 1 item. 2 to 300 counts as 2 items, and then so on and so forth as it moves up. And of course it explains to you with over encumbered. And if you are over encumbered, what happens? Well, if you're over encumbered, you're not going to be fighting too well. That's just, you know, the way it is. Okay. So then the next part goes into experience, where I explained experience to you. And there's some questions that you have to ask yourself, which is, did you participate in the game session? And what that's referring to is if you're playing in a large group, you know, did you actually contribute? Did you actually play? Or did you just sit there the whole entire time, you know, staring at your character sheet doing one of these? You know, did you explore a new location? Did you defeat one or more dangerous adversaries? Did you overcome an obstacle without using force? And did you give in to your weakness? And this is an optional rule, and that's unique, where how they tie the weakness in, and it all counts towards your experience. So it's kind of an incentive to actually use that. Now, I'd already explained rolling the dice, the difference between rolling a dragon compared to rolling a demon. Boons and banes, which you could think of those like advantage, disadvantage rolls, opposed rolls, which would mean two 20-siders, you know, against one another. Lowest one takes the win. Then the core skills, which is going to go into your basic core skills. It's going to explain a little bit more to you about heroic abilities. And like I said, think of heroic abilities like feats, if you want to think about them that way. But unlike feats, takes you a little longer to, you know, really achieve those. Then it goes from there into the combat and damage section. I have to say, I love this art. I mean, just look at that. And I'm gonna point this out to you. I was laughing when I was reading through the book. Now, you see here, this guy, he's got this warg. He's jumping in. You know, you see the dwarf winding up. Then, of course, you look back here, and you see this guy just grinning and laughing like, yeah, go get him, fucker. You know, it's just like, it's great. I love the art. Rounds and initiatives, drawing the initiative. What do they mean by that? Drawing the initiative. So, if you've ever played Forbidden Lands, it tells you to acquire yourself a standard deck of 52 playing cards, and how they suggest you pull any suit you want, 1 through 10, and then you shuffle them up, and that's how you divvy out initiative. They went a step further. They actually gave you your own initiative deck here, and initiative works in a very, very, it's initiative, but there's a few things about it that you have to know with the game. So typically when I play solitaire, I'm not going to use these cards. I'm just going to use your basic 10-sider die, and I'm going to roll for the opposing side versus my side, and I'm going to utilize it that way because I'm playing solitaire. But if I was playing in a large group, this is going to come in and be very handy, and it's going to really help as a group to be able to play out the session. And I can see the, I'm going to say necessity behind it. And that is the fact that you shuffle the deck of cards, everybody draws a card, and then they turn them over. Of course, the lowest goes first, all the way up to the highest. Now, there's a couple of things with initiative that can be done. One, if the turn has not been played and all the initiative cards are out, and you decide you want to go first, maybe it's more beneficial for, let's say, you have a knight, and before your hunter fires off the bow, it'd be more beneficial to send the knight in to try to weaken the opponent down. So you can swap those initiative cards around, take your turn first, and then this would help the party a little bit more, because now that hunter can make a better decision. They can wait and see what's going to happen. Is this the only opponent, or are reinforcements coming? And maybe that arrow would be better left to firing at the reinforcements coming and try to slow down their approach. That's one thing. The other thing is, using that same example, what if you wanted, like I said, to wait? You wanted to let other people go and see, how is this creature going to be knocked down? Would it be a waste for you to use up that initiative first versus allowing somebody else? Holding your initiative, basically, is what they call that. Another thing to consider and think about, even though you draw your initiative card, and let's say, let's just say this troll right here, he drew a 1, and let's just say your archer right here drew a 5, okay? Now, this is the thing that kind of stinks about combat and the initiative and all that. So the troll goes to swing, and you're left with two options. You can either parry or you can dodge. Now, being that he's an archer, I'm going to say he's probably going to dodge, which is okay. So he dodges, and he successfully dodges the attack. Good for him. But when it comes to his initiative time to take his turn, he cannot because he dodged. So he has already used his action to dodge the incoming attack. So there's a lot of things with combat you really have to look at with this game, which is, it's very cool. Like I said, it's a breath of fresh air to a very large extent. So rather than just throwing 20s on the board and trying to, get a high number, at this point, there's a lot more thought into it. There's more strategy into it, because now you have to really think about that. You got to weigh things out. Is it better to take the hit if you have decent armor and you know it's going to reduce the damage, and maybe take a couple of hit points, but finish your opponent off when it's your initiative? Or do you parry and or dodge? You're going to lose your turn, and now you're going to have to wait to the next initiative cycle to be able to finish business, we'll say. So yeah, there's a lot of things that go into the combat. The combat was very well thought out and presented in the way that they do it. I have to say, I like it a lot. So when it comes to your actions, there's two actions that they call free actions and then an action. So in any action, your character can move and, we'll say, attack. But you also have what they call a free action, which is you can draw a weapon. You could change position. So this would be if you had an onslaught of, let's say, archers coming in, and you had to dive for cover. So you threw yourself to the ground and tried to scramble, threw yourself to the ground to get behind a wall like so. It could be a free action. You could drop an item. Let's say you got a bow, and all of a sudden, oh no, that enemy's closing in on you, and the bow's not going to do you much good because they're going to be adjacent to you. So you can drop the bow, shout, which is, really just using profanity against your your enemy. Maybe that'll work. Maybe it'll intimidate them away from you. So those are your free actions. Your actual actions, you can dash, which is this doubles your movement rate. You could utilize a melee attack, a ranged attack. You can parry, dodge, pick up an item. So if you drop an item, that's a free action. But in order for you to retrieve that item and pick it back up, that costs you an action. To equip and or unequip armor costs you an action. First aid, which means you're healing. So if you're the party healer, in order to heal somebody, that's going to cost you an action. To rally, and rally means you're going to, just what it is, rally up the troops, raise the morale high, and go in and slaughter everybody in your way. Break the door down, that will take you an action. Pick a lock, that is an action. Use an item such as a potion or something like that, that is an action as well. Activate an ability. Use an innate or heroic ability, cost you an action. Cast a spell, cost you an action. Helping other characters, give them a boon to a roll in the same round, cost you an action. And of course, a round rest. So rests, yes, yeah, that's coming up here soon, and we'll talk about that in the round rest. But so besides the actions you can take, decisions you can make in combat, there are two different attacks that it really does break up and specify, that being a sneak attack versus an ambush. The difference being a sneak attack is where you have to be successful on a sneaking skill roll, and then you can sneak up behind your enemy, and then at that point take a free attack before the initiative round begins, or an ambush. And an ambush, is the way they explain it, is your characters are hiding in wait for the enemies to go by, and then of course you're going to flank them and attack them. Now, and it breaks it up. I could go on and on and on about the combat. It really does break it up, but it makes it extremely simple with movement and what you can do. Breaks it down into melee combat. Melee combat's pretty simple. It's going to be your skill roll against a melee attack on your 20-sider, and if you do hit at that point, you're going to roll weapon damage. So the weapon's going to have its own dice associated for damage, and then you're going to add, if you have the ability modifier for it, your ability modifier on top of that, and that goes for both melee and ranged. Okay, I need to get a drink after that one. So now we're going to look at armor. Armor is, unlike the 20 systems where you've come accustomed to hearing AC, armor does not work that way. You have what they call an armor rating. So if you played Forbidden Lands, you're going to be very familiar with this. And if you have not, this is going to be a new concept. So armor rating is going to be a number depending on how well the armor is. We'll say leather armor, for example, is an armor rating of 1. Any damage taken from the weapon will be subtracted from that first, reducing its damage. And so basically you can see the benefit of heavier armor. But even when you do have heavier armor, that presents another challenge, which is, of course, if you played any type of RPG, you know heavy armor slows you down, cuts into your agility. Death. This is the interesting part of this game, and I do like how they deal with this. It's you know what? It's cool. It's very cool compared to a lot of other game systems we've seen out there and how they deal with it. And I like it. I have to admit, I do really like it. So here at the bottom of the character sheet, if you can see right here in the red, you have what's called death rolls. You see the hit points, and then below the red, you see death rolls, and there's 3 ticks, successes, and failures. So how this works, your character reaches 0 hit points. At that point, you have to roll a Constitution, and you roll on your 20-sider. Now, you got to roll, you get 3 tries on this. If you roll a dragon, good for you. Those are failures. I mean, successes. So if you get 3 successes at that point, you stabilize, and then after what they call a shift rest, which is 6 hours, you're going to roll on the severe injuries table and see what your character sustained. If you, let's say, roll 3 demons, it is at that point that you have failed. Well, guess what? Your character just earned his wings, and it's time to roll a new character. So, but let's just go into the severe injuries table really quick, because this is interesting. It gives you a randomized chart, 1 through 20, to go through. So I'm going to roll a 20 here. Let's see if we come up with a 5. What is a 5? Teeth knocked out. Your performance and persuasion skills levels are permanently reduced by 2 to a minimum of 3. Wow. So permanently, there's just no coming back from that. That's not something you're going to heal from. Okay, so I was dealing with death rolls, how death works, and oh, I should say, to get this out there, so when it comes to damage, and in this game system, doesn't matter whether it's monster and or character, if the damage, because if you do roll a 1 during combat, that's a critical. So you're going to roll the weapon's damage twice, and then you're going to add the strength modifier into it. Both monsters and characters. Now, if the damage puts that character's hit points into the negative range, it's instant death. You're done. You're just done. It's time to roll a new character. And the same goes for the monsters. So I just wanted to add that one in there before I went any further with that. I want to talk a little bit about healing and how the healing works with the time. So if you remember, towards the beginning of the video, I talked about how they break time up. You have a round, which is 10 seconds. You have a stretch, which is 15 minutes. Then you have a shift that's 6 hours. So you could take a round rest. And a round rest is really benefits the mage, because you can take a round rest and you can heal 1d6 willpower points, not hit points whatsoever. Now, if you wanted to heal hit points, you could take a stretch rest, which at that point, a stretch rest would be about 15 minutes, and you can heal 1d6 hit points or 2d6 hit points if somebody is assisting you and healing you, whether it's with magic and or a healer kit or something like that. If you take a shift rest, which a shift rest is of 6 hours, at that point, you are going to recover all your lost HP, which are hit points and willpower points, and heal all conditions. If a shift rest is interrupted by combat or hard work, it has no effect. So you see the benefits of being able to get a shift rest. Which conditions? So conditions are, they can be brutal. And if you look at the character sheet, if you look at them ticks underneath here, anytime you fail a roll, you get a demon, you can get a tick. Certain things that you do throughout the game can cause you to get one of those ticks checked off. And then that can be for your strength, you can become exhausted. Your constitution, you become sickly. Agility, you become dazed. Intelligence, you can become angry. Willpower, you can become scared. And charisma, you can become disheartened. Now, on the surface, this may not seem that bad, but really, how this all ties in, if all of your conditions have, ticks have been checked off, then at that point, you have no other choice. You have to rest. You just have to rest. You can't go on. And let's say you got a check in your agility and now your character is dazed. So any skill that at that point is derived from agility, you're going to have to roll that skill at a Bane, taking the higher of the two rolls. So it's cool how they really worked that in with the game and the game mechanics. I mean, just really cool. I'm actually enjoying this. Let me move on to speed things up. Of course, you get to the section right here, riding animals. So it explains using mounts and other sources of transportation to be able to move your characters twice the amount of speed across the world map. Magic. Okay, when it comes to magic, there's a lot that goes into magic's skills and heroic abilities. Willpower points, if you remember me talking about that, and of course you have your slot right here that is marked off. Now, you're probably thinking like Forbidden Lands, where you push a roll, and if you get the cross blades, hey, good for you, you succeeded. But if you get the little skulls, at that point, it's bad, but at the same time it's good because you gain these willpower points. This game is not like that. You can push a roll in this game, but there are consequences for that. But willpowers are points are used to pay for skills, for heroic abilities, and if you're a mage, they are used to pay for your spells. So when it comes to schools of magic, because you have to choose a school of magic when you create a mage, and you could choose one of three. Animism, they call it. Animalism, if you will. And I associate that with a druid. So if you see your mage going more towards a druid. Elementalism, which is you're a mage that deals in the 4 elements. Everything was in balance with the 4 elements of nature. Then there's a mentalism. And mentalism is your character is going to be more focused on powers of the mind, telepathy, stuff like that. And of course, they have what they call general magic. General magic is not a school, but a collection of general spells. You can learn general spells no matter which school of magic you are subscribed to. Interesting enough. So, the spells rate in rank, starting from rank 1, going up to rank 3. Obviously, rank 1 being at the lower tier of power, rank 3 being at the higher tier of power. And really, what you have to look at, not only the power level, but you have to look at the requirements. Some spells require your mage to, at that point, utter some words to be able to make them work, make a gesture. They have to focus their mind in order to get them to work, or they may need special ingredients for the spell to be able to be successful. Either of which, any one of those, or a combination of them, all have to be fulfilled in order for the spell to work correctly. Now, magic tricks, and I'm going to break down magic tricks for you 5e players out there very, very simply. Think of these as your cantrips. And in 5e, if you have a magic class, you have a thing called a cantrip. A cantrip is a basic spell that your character knows, and they can just keep boom, 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 one after another, and it doesn't count. But if they actually have to use a prepared spell, and after it is cast, they have forgotten it, and they have to prepare that again. No different in this game system. Same way, they call these magic tricks, which is your basically minor, relatively harmless spells that any mage can learn and use, and they don't have to be part of any school in order to learn them. So, covered that, casting time, range, these are all basic concepts for any RPG game, and I don't really see the benefit of going into them that far. Magical mishaps. This is interesting. So, in this game, there's always the percentage that things are going to go wrong, like in any RPG game. But if you are a mage and you cast a spell, you roll your 20-sider, you get a demon, oh boy, you at that point have to roll on the magical mishap table. Hell, let's roll and see what we come up with. Let's roll a 20-sider here. Got a 19. Let's go there. Oh, you become one category older. For example, from adult to old. Wow. Your attributes and derived ratings change as per the table on page 24, but your skill levels do not. Ouch. If you were already old, you become very frail and get -2 strength and constitution. Holy crap. The effect is permanent, and you age normally from your new age. Wow. Wow, that's pretty brutal. Actually. Wow. Okay. Well, so throughout the game, when it comes to magic, you can learn new spells from a teacher and or a grimoire. You must have a skill level in the relevant school of magic or any school of magic for general spells. That's very cool. That's very cool. So, in reading this, the way it explained it, which I found very interesting, was you can go two ways with magic. One, like D&D, where the wizard has studied these and, you know, has remembered them to mind, and he sits and he studies every day and refreshes his memory and casts a spell. That's one way. The other way is you have a spell book and you study out of the spell book and relearn that spell and are able to cast it. But because you have a spell book, there's always the possibility something could happen to where you could lose that spell book. Or you could go on quests to find other spell books. Or you could meet up with teachers or other mages and you could work out a deal to where you could learn spells out of their spell books. So it's really cool how that works. It gives you a wider array of options to be able to choose from in the game world and kind of keeps it fresh. It's not just cut and dry. Here's your spell list that goes with your levels, and at this experience, you hit this and you get this many spells now. Whereas with this, it's more of you actually gain ranks and everything as your character progresses through the world, and through their world, through the trials, you'll say, is what makes your character become more knowledgeable, more skillful, and yeah, that's cool. It's a very cool game system. Very cool. As a matter of fact, when I get done with this video, I'm going to start to put together a couple of characters and start playing it. Okay. So that was animalism, elementalism, and then mentalism. 3 different schools of magic. It goes into your gear, how much armor costs, you know, gives you all the information you need to know for your armor ratings. Your weapons, of course, it gives you a large amount of weapons, and then it breaks it up with the necessary information you need to know, like is it one-handed, two-handed, the minimum level of strength you need to be able to wield the weapon, if it's range, the range of the weapon, how much damage the weapon does, and the durability. So how many points of damage can the weapon take before the weapon is useless and it has to be repaired by an artisan? The cost, the supply. So the supply is it a very common weapon? Is it a rare weapon? Is it a very uncommon weapon? And then it goes into features explaining that to you. So features is going to break it down to, is it a bludgeoning weapon? Is it a piercing weapon? Is it a slashing weapon? And that's going to go back to your armor, where the best example I can use, if you're wearing full plate armor, you're not going to be that susceptible to a slashing weapon. Whereas if you will be susceptible to a projectile weapon like an arrow or a bolt from a crossbow. Okay, last but not least, it gets into your light sources, your tools, your services, and then journeys. Did I already get into the journeys? Let me see here. Yeah, maybe not. Okay, no, that's towards the end of the book. And then it goes into the bestiary. And basically, your monsters. And the cool thing is, it has a chart over here. In each encounter, it breaks it down on a randomized chart. So, even if you're playing solitaire, every time you face one of these, and it's their turn on a successful attack, you're going to roll a die, and it's going to do something completely different every turn. Like this demon I'm looking at right here. which is a d6. Let's see what the demon does. We'll roll a d6. He has a 5. And what would that damage be? The victim turns into an animal. Huh. Okay. Roll a d6. 5. The victim turns into a deer. The victim gains stats as per page 99 and cannot speak. Roll a d4 every shift. On a 1, the effect will wear off. Damn. So there's a multitude of different animals you can turn into. You can turn into a cat, a fox, a goat, a wolf, a deer, a bear. A bear may not be good for him, though. Bear, you could really do some damage with that. And, of course, what would the game be without, of course, a dragon? And so it gives you your basic starter encounters. And as it mentioned in the book, more will be added as they expand the game and they come out with more expansions for it. This is just the base starter set to kind of get everybody on the same page. And it goes through to give you a handful of encounters, and I'm more than positive, not 100%, but I'm pretty positive you're going to find some interesting encounters in this book that's probably not in this one. Gives you a list of common animals that you can fight. Cat, dog, goat, donkey, horse, wild boar, deer, moose, fox, wolf, and bear, which all kind of tie back into the things that you need to know. Just an example, the demon attack earlier. So, last, adventurers, and we get into journeys. And journeys is unique. This kind of reminds me of the way that they do the One Ring and they do Forbidden Lands when it comes to traversing the map. And basically what that is you have a skill called bushcraft. And as you travel throughout the world, when you roll, one moment. When you move throughout the world, you have to roll a bushcraft skill. If you fail at that skill, at that point, your character is going to move in a random direction and you're going to be lost and you're going to have to try to make another successful bushcraft skill to get yourself back on the track. Now, of course, while this is happening, you can always run into random encounters and other things that can complicate that and make things very interesting. But to add insult to injury, if you do bomb the roll, let's say you roll a demon, it's at that point you have to roll a d12 on the mishap. So let's see what happens there. Let's say we get lost, we have rolled a demon. Now what do we have? We got a 7. On the mishap, what do we have? Ooh, a sprained ankle. A random player character falls or missteps and suffers d6 damage. Armor has no effect, but boots reduce the damage by 2. Rough. Okay. Goes into with your journeys as well. Making camp. This is very cool. It's very reminiscent of the Bitter Reach. If you've ever played the Bitter Reach at Forbidden Lands, where it really focuses on the bitter cold and the survival roles. This is no different. You also see this represented here as well. And there's certain things you can do to take safeguards against that, like how well equipped are your characters. Like, do you have a bedroll? If not, then you're going to roll at a Bane for your rest, and you know how that works, your advantage, disadvantage, basically the way I'm talking here, but you're going to roll a Bane, and you may not get that rest, so now you're going to have a condition that's going to carry over, that's going to really complicate things for you. Or if your adventuring party has a tent, they can put up a tent that's going to shield them from the elements. Or if they're out in a bitter cold, if they have a fur, we'll say cloak or covering to be able to keep them warm, they're going to be better well outfitted against the bitter, bitter cold of temperatures, versus if they don't, where every hour on the hour they have to roll a survival roll. And failing those at first can make them very cold, and then essentially will kill your characters. So another one of those attention paid. Man, I can't freaking talk. Oh god. Okay. Just another one of those things that's attention to details. All right. Food in the wilderness. Here's another thing that you have to keep track of. So just like Forbidden Lands we've seen there, you have to keep track of your rations. So food, water, so on and so forth. Your character can actually die from starvation in this game. So if you run out of rations, you can always have the option of hunting, fishing, foraging. And here's the interesting thing that I thought was very interesting. It even goes into cooking. And there is, going back to bushcraft, that's the skill you have to use. It says anyone eating raw fish or meat is at the risk of falling ill. Roll against virulence of a 10. So you got to roll, try to get a 10 and or less. And if not, at that point, your characters become very sick from undercooked food. Talk about paying attention to detail. Now, towards the end of the book, it gets into the Game Master's role, and it starts to give you some charts for NPCs that you can put into your game. And last but not least, which is really cool, I do enjoy, and that is the fact that it gets to the very last, which is creating your own adventures. And they give you a separate deck of cards. I haven't opened these. I'm going to leave them sealed till I'm ready to use them. And what it does in there is this is going to help you map out, create your own maps, create your own adventures, and build a deck and put it together, much like they would with what they gave us here. I'm going to show you in a quick second. And that's that. You reach the end of the main core rule book, and you are ready to play the game. Nice thing is, you're looking at about 65 pages, and it's a quick read. It's very easy to read. Won't take you long at all. And if you played any type of D20 game system out there, you're going to pick up on it very quickly. There's some subtle changes between if you're accustomed to playing, whether it's newer, older versions of D20 systems, but basically it's an excellent game from what I see. But before I actually give my real review where I think this game comes in, I just wanted to show you one other thing that they do incorporate with this, because I did open the other sealed deck of cards. Now, on top of this, is what I found really cool. They do give you a treasure deck. So you can take this, shuffle this up, and randomly have a treasure deck. So rather than going through a DMG guide or something like that and trying to roll on a random table, such and such, you can just pick a card, read the description, and then write down like silver coins value 2d6 times 10 silver coins. So that really helps. It randomizes it. It kind of keeps it fresh every time, and you don't know what to expect. But the cool thing I do like about this is right here, improvised weapons. So if you decide you do not want to use your main weapons in fear of they may wear out too quick and it's going to leave you defenseless, you can at that point use improvised weapons. So let's go to cave, and let's go to forest. 4 cards right here. Just gonna give them a quick shuffle. And we'll take a look at the forest cards and see what we find. And that is a boulder. Make an acrobatics roll to jump up on the boulder and throw yourself at an enemy within 2 meters. The attacker inflicts 2d6 damage, bludgeoning plus damage bonus, and cannot be dodged or parried. If it succeeds, both you and the enemy drop to the ground. If your roll fails, only you fall over and suffer d6 damage. So as you can see, even your improvised weapons come with the possibility of something good or something very bad happening. Okay, I know that was quite the mouthful. I know that was a lot to get through in a very short amount of time. I tried to make it as short as I possibly could and try to cram everything in. Now, this is my initial review of this. I've read through the rule book, I've looked at the contents, but I have yet to actually play the game. So where do I rate this? Where do I rate it in? Well, first thing is, like with any RPG, one of the very first things I do is I look at this right here, the art. The art is really what attracts us in. It's really what calls to us and brings us in. And a lot of us have seen RPGs where it has some excellent cover art. It looks really good. You get into the RPG, you read through it, and you're like, oh, it's a cool idea, but never gonna play it. With this, not the case. Where do I put the art in this? The art, the fact that I'm more than certain this is all computerized art. I can't say that for 100%. It could be, this could still be hand-drawn on paper by an artist, or it could be done on a laptop or something like that. I'm not 100% sure because, but I am just going to say the art is over the top. I love it compared to a lot of the art that we see today versus, let me grab you an example here. That's not good. You know, if you look at this right here, I mean, it's what's come expected of modern RPG art today. You tell it's very computer generated, but it's what the standard is today. That's just what it is. Whether you're playing, you know, 5e or Pathfinder or any one of those type of games out there, it's just kind of it's the standard. This is a throwback to old school gaming. Looking at it looks old school. Reading through it feels old school. So for that, I'm gonna give that, man, I'm gonna say an 8 out of 10. It is just, the artwork, in my opinion, is top notch, and I hope to God they come out with a t-shirt print of this, because I really want that. So overall, what do I think of editing of the book, how it's laid out, how clean and concise is it? I'm gonna, 10 out of 10. It's been a long time since I've actually had an RPG tour. You can sit down, it's an easy read. As you read through it, it goes, instead of having to get halfway through the book and then reference back to something all the way in the beginning of the book without any page reference or anything, you just got to flip back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This is clean and concise. So as you get further into the book, as it explains, you can just sit down, grab the book, grab a pre-generated character. As you thumb through it, you can just start playing, and you're going to be able to access everything. 100%. I agree with that 100%. And the cool thing is, the editing is superb. The artwork is superb. Explaining mechanics of the games and the examples to it are very short, sweet, straight to the point. clean and concise. Man, I'm going to give that a 9 out of 10 because that's just something you don't really see. I mean, Forbidden Lands isn't that hard of a game to understand, but Dragonsbane, in my opinion, the editing, layout, and everything was just far more superior to even what we've seen with The One Ring and Forbidden Lands. It's really good. I mean, I love it. So far, I love it. Now, let's get into for the price, right? For the price and what you get. Where do you rate that? Well, there's going to be a couple of things that I'm going to factor into this today. First thing, we hear it all the time, inflation. Let's face it, everything's getting more expensive. It's not getting cheaper by any stretch of the imagination. So the fact that they had crammed this much content into the box, where when you have all the contents in this box, it weighs, probably feels like about 8, maybe 9 pounds worth of gaming stuff here. I'm gonna give that a 9 out of 10. Easy. I mean, you got to figure what, before the OGL debacle, what Wizards was charging for their books and what they were asking. You're looking at some of them prices, $40-$50 for a book versus what you pay for this. And I would have to look, but I think I bought this pre-order, I want to say it was right around $40. So everything that you get in this, I mean, you get a full campaign setting, a world map, you get excellent, well-written rule book. You get, granted, they're not, you know, resin 3-dimensional miniatures, but you're getting cardboard standees, so essentially miniatures with a terrain map. So if you're just getting into this and you're struggling and you're looking for somewhere to begin, I mean, come on. You get a dungeon map, you get a terrain map. It gives you everything to do your combat on right here. And on top of that, gives you a solitaire rule set handbook to teach you how to play the game solo if you've never played. Come on, guys. How can you go wrong there? I mean, 9 out of 10. Easy. That's a no-brainer. I mean, it's an excellent game system. From what I see here, excellent. 2 thumbs up the whole way. I am looking so forward to actually sitting down and getting to play the freaking game. Technical issues aside, I would have already been playing if it wasn't for that. But it's well worth the money, guys. It's well worth the money. It was well worth the wait. And I can foresee this is going to be a game system that I am going to enjoy for a long time. This is going to be a classic. I mean, this actually may knock the One Ring off its pedestal. How much I love the One Ring and enjoy that. Dragonbane may replace that. Now, cool thing about it, it did say, and it made a nod with the creatures in the book, the Bestiary, is the fact that there will be more added along with expansions and opening up the world in the future. So we have that to look forward to as well. All right, my friends, hope you enjoyed the review. It's been a while since I have done one, and I have been waiting on Dragonbane for quite a while, and I'm happy it's here. And I think I'm going to leave the video off here and get to character creation and deploying some minis and playing some games and actually enjoying the weekend. All right, my friends, those are my thoughts, not yours. And with that being said, this is ArtichokeDip signing off.